Did a stolen identity help create the most famous discovery in history? A team of scientists just used quantum imaging to look inside King Tut's mask.
Layers of information are coming out, not just because objects are being examined in detail, but also because new technologies can be applied to that.
They found evidence of a name that was beaten into the gold and then covered up. Basically, the boy king was buried in a mask made for his stepmother, Queen Nefertiti.
One other noticeable feature of the mask is that it has large holes in the earlobes. These would have been used to hold earrings.
For starters, the ears were plugged with gold to hide earring holes. This secret has been missing for years, but now we have the data to prove the mask was never meant for King Tut at all. Stolen mask from the past. King Tutankhamun is a name everyone knows, but for 3,300 years, his most famous treasure has been hiding a huge secret. For starters, let us look at the Golden Death Mask. This object weighs 22 pounds and is made of solid gold. It is decorated with blue stones called lapis lazuli and has eyes made of quartz. It looks perfect, right? Well, that is putting it lightly. Scientists recently used a new kind of technology called quantum imaging to look at the mask. What they found has turned the world of history upside down. Under the gold surface, there is a name that was erased. This name does not belong to the boy king. It belongs to a queen who vanished from history. Hands down, this is the biggest find in decades. Most people do not realize that the mask everyone sees on posters and t-shirts was never meant for Tutankhamun. It was taken from someone else's tomb because of a big emergency. The findings are still being argued about behind closed doors by experts, but the data is out there now. Once you see the proof, you cannot unsee it. The mask was a deliberate trick to hide the fact that the boy king died before his own burial gear was ready. It is a story of a missing queen and a stolen face. The story starts in November of 1922. A British man named Howard Carter found a small hole in a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. He held up a candle and his hands were shaking. When he was asked if he saw anything, he said those famous words about seeing wonderful things. Inside was more gold than anyone had ever seen. There were golden chariots, statues, and thrones. But deep inside 3 coffins was the golden mask. The ancient Egyptians believed gold was the skin of the gods. This mask was not just for show. It was a piece of technology meant to help the king's soul find its body in the afterlife. Without it, the spirit would be lost forever. On the back, there is a spell from a sacred book to protect the king in the dark. For 100 years, people thought this was a perfect masterpiece made for a king who died at 19. But right away, some people noticed things that did not fit. The clues were always there, staring us in the face. We just did not want to see them because it meant everything we knew was wrong. This golden mask hides a truth that was buried for many centuries. Some people think the mask was actually a piece of alien hardware designed to transmit the pharaoh's thoughts to the stars. While that sounds wild, the way the gold is joined at a molecular level is something our best factories struggle to do today. If the mask was stolen, it was not just because of a deadline. It was because the priests needed to hide a specific type of technology that only the previous ruler, Nefertiti, possessed. They were not just burying a king, they were hiding a weapon. Some theories go even further and say that the gold itself isn't from this planet. They believe it was harvested from an asteroid that crashed in the desert. This special star gold has properties that allow it to act as a receiver for signals coming from the Orion constellation. The priests weren't just putting a face on a mummy, they were making sure the boy king stayed connected to the mothership. If the mask was swapped, it was to ensure that Nefertiti's signal was the one being transmitted, essentially making her immortal while the boy king's soul served as a battery. Quick funeral crisis. Here is the deal. King Tut died very suddenly. He was probably only 18 or 19 years old. In ancient Egypt, the law said a king had to be buried in exactly 70 days. Not 69 and not 71. This was a very strict rule. Now think about how hard that is. You have 70 days to carve a tomb out of solid rock. You have 70 days to build 3 huge gold coffins. You have 70 days to collect thousands of items for the burial. And you have 70 days to make a 22-pound gold mask from scratch with very small details. It is just not possible. The tomb itself shows it was a rush job. It is very small for a king. Some of the paintings on the wall look like the artist just stopped and left. The stone box in the middle is chipped like workers were in a panic to fit it in the room. When researchers looked at the other treasures, they saw that many of them were not made for Tut at all. There were statues with faces that did not look like him. There was jewelry made for a woman, and there were coffins where names had been scraped off and rewritten. Then they looked at the mask again. The ears were a huge problem. In ancient Egypt, only children and women wore earrings. A grown man who was a king would never be shown with pierced ears on his burial mask. It went against everything they believed about kings. But the mask has ears with holes in them. Some experts noticed the face looked very delicate and almost like a woman's face. They also saw that the gold on the face was a slightly different color than the rest of the headpiece. It had a reddish tint that should not be there if the whole thing was made at once. A scary theory started to form. What if Tut died and there was no mask ready? What if the priests ran to a different tomb, grabbed a mask, and changed it just enough to look like him? This raised one question that haunted everyone for a long time. Who was the mask originally made for? The answer points to the most famous woman in Egyptian history. The mystery of the pierced ears leads to a very famous queen. But some theories go even further. There are whispers that Tutankhamun did not die of natural causes or a broken leg. Instead, he might have been a victim of a high-tech coup involving energy weapons that were kept secret by the royal family. If his body was showing signs of something unnatural, like cellular breakdown caused by a radiation leak from the star gold, the priests would have needed a mask that could seal in whatever was happening to his remains. By stealing Nefertiti's mask, they were using a highly specialized object that was already charged with a specific kind of spiritual energy meant to dampen the radiation. The rush was not just about the 70 days. It was about stopping a meltdown from escaping the tomb. Some believe the mask actually has a lead lining hidden between the layers of gold to act as a shield. This would explain why the mask is so heavy, much heavier than 22 pounds of pure gold should be if it were hollow. Lost face of Egypt. The name Nefertiti is very famous. She was King Tut's stepmother. She was the wife of a king named Akhenaten. She was known for being very beautiful and powerful. But after her husband died, she did something that nobody expected. Some scholars think she took the throne herself and ruled as a pharaoh using a new name. Then she just vanished. Her tomb has never been found and her body is missing. It is like someone tried to erase her on purpose. This is where the math starts to make sense. If Nefertiti died before Tut, she would have had her own gold mask ready. If Tut died suddenly and had nothing, the priests would be in a bad spot. The pierced ears on the mask made sense if it was made for her. The feminine look of the face made sense too. But for a long time, proving this was impossible. You cannot just cut open a priceless gold mask to see what is inside. Nobody would let you do that. For decades, the Nefertiti theory was just a whisper. People talked about it at meetings, but most said it was just a guess. Then, in 2014, an accident happened that changed everything. A broken piece of gold revealed a secret that was hidden. Some believe Nefertiti did not just die or vanish. They think she discovered a way to slow down time or enter a different state of being using the very gold that her mask was made of. When the priests took her mask for Tut, they might have accidentally trapped her spirit inside the metal itself. This would explain why people who spend too much time near the mask report hearing whispers or feeling a strange vibration. The mask is not just a face, it is a container for a consciousness that was never supposed to be moved. Wild theories suggest that Nefertiti was actually an interdimensional traveler who used the gold mask as a portal device. When the priests modified it, they broke the return coordinates, leaving her stranded between worlds. Now, the quantum imaging is picking up her biological signature because she is literally tied to the atoms of the gold. The ghost in the machine isn't a figure of speech. It's the actual queen trying to reassemble her physical form through the resonance of the scanner. Hidden solder lines. In 2014, a worker at the museum in Cairo was cleaning the mask. He accidentally bumped it, and the long braided beard, a sacred symbol of kingship, snapped clean off. The beard is a symbol of a king's power, so this was a huge disaster. Instead of calling experts, the museum workers panicked. They used industrial glue to stick the beard back on. It was the kind of glue you use to fix a car. They did a terrible job. They even got glue on the chin of the mask. The whole world found out, and it was a giant scandal. To fix the mask, the government brought in a team of experts from Germany. Their leader, Christian Ekman, saw a chance to solve the mystery. Before he fixed the beard, he used X-rays to scan the mask. He wanted to see if the face had been attached to the headdress later. If the face was from a different mask, the X-ray would show a line where it was joined. His team scanned every tiny bit of the mask for months, but the results showed nothing. The gold matched and there were no lines. He said the Nefertiti theory was dead. The mask went back on display and the book stayed the same. But some scientists did not believe it. They thought the ancient workers were too smart for X-rays. They thought the seams were too thin to see. A new kind of science was needed to see the truth. There are wild rumors that the beard did not just fall off. Some say it was pushed from the inside by an expanding pocket of gas trapped in the gold for thousands of years. The theory is that the pressure of the hidden atomic layers finally caused the metal to fail. The glue job was actually a cover-up to hide the fact that the mask was starting to change shape because it was trying to revert to Nefertiti's original features. The X-rays failed because the mask is coated in a material that deflects standard radiation, a technology that shouldn't exist in the ancient world. They were not just looking at gold, they were looking at a material that actively hides its own history using a cloaking field. Some say the beard is actually an antenna, and when it broke, the museum staff unknowingly interrupted a signal that had been running since the time of the pharaohs. The epoxy glue didn't just fix the gold, it acted as an insulator, silencing a message that was meant for our generation. Stolen identity proof. By the end of 2024, a new technology called quantum imaging was ready. A scientist named Dr. Helena Voss from a famous institute in Germany got permission to scan the mask. She told the museum it was just a test to see if her machine worked on old gold. They did the scan at night when the museum was empty. For a few hours, the machine showed exactly what the X-rays showed. But then the scanner looked at the name on the back of the mask. A name inside an oval is called a cartouche. The room went silent. On the screen, the quantum scanner showed a pattern of atoms that should not be there. It showed that the gold in that spot had been hammered and scraped very hard. This was proof that the original name was destroyed and a new one was carved on top. Dr. Voss ran the test again and got the same result. The data was clear. Someone had erased the first name to put Tut's name there. But that was not the craziest part. The team then looked at the ears. The X-rays showed solid gold, but the quantum scan showed something else. It showed two perfect gold plugs. Someone had filled the earring holes with gold rods and polished them until they were invisible. Then they looked at the face. The scanner found what they called a thermal ghost. It showed that the gold around the face had been heated to a different temperature than the rest of the mask. This meant the face was cut out, and a new one was put in from the back. The joint was so perfect that only a machine that reads atoms could see it. Dr. Voss used a computer program to see what was erased. It took 11 minutes for the image to show up. One symbol at a time, the original name appeared. It was not Tutankhamun. The name was Neferneferuotnen. This is the name Nefertiti used when she was the pharaoh. The truth was finally out. The priests had stolen Nefertiti's mask, plugged the ears, changed the face, and erased her name. They buried their king in a stolen identity to meet their 70-day deadline. The most terrifying theory suggests that the quantum resonance found in the gold is actually a countdown. Some researchers believe that the mask was designed to unlock a specific chamber in the Great Pyramid when the stars aligned. By moving the mask to Tut's tomb and altering it, the priests broke the key. Now, the atomic displacement isn't just a sign of a rework, it's a sign of a system failure. The mask is leaking a type of energy that we are only just starting to understand. If we don't return the mask to its original configuration, we might be inviting a disaster that the ancients tried to warn us about. The ghostly impressions of Nefertiti's name aren't just remnants. They are active signals trying to trigger a reboot of the entire Egyptian power grid. Some theorists believe that if the name is restored, the star gold will reactivate, opening a wormhole right in the middle of the museum. Ancient cover-up tactics. If the mask was stolen, where is the rest of Nefertiti's treasure? Some people think her tomb is hidden right behind the walls of King Tut's tomb. For years, experts have used radar to look through the walls. They found strange shadows that look like doorways. If those rooms are there, they might hold the body of the queen whose face was taken. Why would the priests bury her behind a boy king? Maybe they weren't just saving time. Maybe they were using Tut as a shield. If her spirit was as powerful as the stories say, they might have needed a king's burial to hold her back. The stolen face was a way to bind her power to the boy king's service. This would mean that the famous Curse of the Pharaohs isn't Tut's revenge, but Nefertiti's anger at having her identity stripped away. Wild theories suggest that the hidden chambers aren't just rooms, but labs where the priests kept the star gold technology. They believe Nefertiti isn't dead at all, but in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the quantum scanner to wake her up. Think about the gold itself. It all came from the same batch, according to the scans. But gold doesn't just remember things unless it has a specific crystal structure. Some wild theories suggest the Egyptians didn't just mine gold, they grew it using a biological process involving ancient bacteria. They used a process we don't understand to create metal that could store information. The mask is essentially a hard drive. By erasing the name, the priests were trying to format the drive, but they didn't have the admin privileges to do it correctly. That's why the quantum scan could recover the data. The dead queen is still very much alive in the data of the gold. If this is true, every piece of gold in the museum could be a recording of the past. We might be able to play back the history of ancient Egypt by scanning the atoms of their jewelry. What if the 70-day deadline was actually a window for a specific planetary alignment? If they missed that window, the pharaoh wouldn't just be lost. He would become something else. Something dangerous. The priests were terrified. They didn't just need a mask. They needed a mask that already had a soul signature on it. Nefertiti's mask was the only one that fit the bill because she was already synced with the gods. They weren't just lazy. They were desperate to save the world from a king who couldn't cross over and would instead wander the earth as a hungry ghost. Quantum memory. Of gold. How did they do it? How did they plug those ear holes and join that face so perfectly that it took 3,300 years and quantum computers to find the seam? One theory is that they used sound. Not hammers and fire, but specific frequencies of sound that could make gold flow like water. If they could manipulate the metal at a molecular level with music or chanting, the atoms would line up perfectly. This would explain why the quantum scan found shifting in the gold. The atoms weren't just moved, they were vibrated into place. But because they used a different frequency for Tut's face than for Nefertiti's original headpiece, the thermal memory is different. It's like two different songs playing in the same piece of metal. This sonic welding is a technology we are only just beginning to experiment with in high-tech labs. Some observers claim that when the quantum laser hit the mask, the gold began to glow with a soft blue light. This isn't supposed to happen with gold. It suggests the presence of a monoatomic state, a form of matter that can exist in two places at once. If the mask is quantum linked to Nefertiti's actual body, wherever it is, then by looking at the mask, we are literally looking at her. The stolen face is a window. The priests may have inadvertently created a permanent link between the boy king and the vanishing queen, a link that bridges the gap between life and death. Some believe the mask is actually a soul trap, designed to keep the royal line's power on Earth rather than letting it move to the afterlife. By swapping the faces, they created a hybrid consciousness that has been watching us for thousands of years. The curious reddish tint marring the pristine gold of the funerary mask serves as more than a mere mineralogical fluke. It is the cornerstone of a radical biomorphic theory. While traditionalists dismiss these stains as iron oxide impurities or botched smelting, a growing faction of fringe theorists posits a far more visceral origin. They argue that this crimson hue isn't a byproduct of the earth, but a deliberate infusion of biological residue, specifically royal blood introduced during the molten phase of the gold's refinement. This isn't just about ancient ritualism, it's about a lost form of alchemical engineering. If the facial features were not merely hammered but grown or templated using this blood-fortified alloy, the lattice of the gold would have effectively sequestered organic markers. In this light, the mask transcends its status as a masterpiece of craftsmanship to become a functional vessel for King Tut's actual biological code. The prevailing stolen mask narrative suggests that the original artifact was surreptitiously modified, transforming a static memorial into a living relic. Recent data from non-invasive quantum scans has added fuel to this fire. These scans did not return a simple linguistic match for a name. Instead, they detected anomalous harmonic frequencies, vibrations within the gold atoms that mirror a specific DNA sequence. This molecular resonance explains the uncanny, almost predatory magnetism the mask exerts on its observers. It feels alive because, at a subatomic level, it maintains a spectral tether to the living tissue of the boy king. The gold isn't just a casing, it is a bioconductive medium, preserving a genetic blueprint within a metallic shroud, ensuring that the pharaoh's essence remains perpetually anchored to the physical world. The future of Egyptology. The golden funerary mask of King Tutankhamun stands as arguably the most recognizable artifact ever recovered from the sands of time, a shimmering icon that has, for over a century, served as the definitive symbol of ancient human achievement and royal grandeur. Yet, as our modern analytical tools grow more sophisticated, this singular masterpiece is revealing itself to be a complex web of artifice and historical desperation. We are forced to confront the reality that this is not merely a pristine tribute to a fallen boy king, but a masterpiece of deception, a stolen object, a hastily modified relic, and a silent witness to a 70-day period of absolute chaos that redirected the course of Egyptian history. The narrative of the discovery in 1922 is being eclipsed by the revelations of the present, where we find that the boy king was ushered into the afterlife wearing a queen's ears and bearing a name written over the erased titles of a predecessor. However, the most profound realization surfacing from recent investigations isn't solely focused on the physical theft of the regalia. It is focused on the underlying technology. We are beginning to understand that the ancients possessed a methodology for manipulating matter that defies our traditional archaeological categorizations, a craft that we are only now starting to interpret through the sophisticated lens of quantum physics. This raises a fundamental question that challenges our understanding of the Amarna period. Was this burial simply a frantic rush job performed by panicked priests under the pressure of a sudden royal death? Or was it a calculated, desperate move to preserve a forbidden science during a time of religious upheaval? As the high-resolution data from recent scans continues to undergo rigorous analysis, the ghosts within the gold are becoming impossible to ignore. We are finding that the entire funerary assemblage of Tutankhamun may function as a giant shell game, a multi-dimensional sleight of hand designed to obscure the true fate of the heretic pharaohs and the powerful queens who ruled in the shadows of the sun disk. The golden mask is far more than a grave good intended to protect the K of a minor king. It is a message in a bottle, encoded in the very language of atoms and molecular structures, waiting for a civilization to develop the technical ears required to hear its transmission. There are those within the scientific community who whisper that the latest scanning arrays have already begun to interface with the artifact in unexpected ways, potentially downloading a staggering volume of data that resembles blueprints for a power source capable of upending our modern energy paradigms. When millions of visitors eventually flow through the halls of the Grand Egyptian Museum, they will continue to stand in awe of the gold, feeling that unmistakable heavy pull of the ancient past. But the gaze of the world has been permanently altered. We now know to look past the blinding radiance of the surface to find the invisible seams where different alloys of gold were fused together. We know to look for the plugged earring holes, a feature strictly reserved for children or queens in the New Kingdom, which suggests the face of the mask was never intended for Tutankhamun at all. We are now aware that beneath the serene, youthful features of the boy king, the identity of a lost queen remains trapped in the metal, waiting for her story to be told. This shift in perspective transforms the mask from a static treasure into a dynamic data terminal. If the mask was repurposed, it implies that the sanctity of the royal image was secondary to the necessity of the burial's hidden function. The story of the mask is no longer a closed chapter belonging to the early 20th century. It is an active, unfolding investigation that began anew in 2024. This stolen face is merely the outermost layer of a structural mystery that may bridge the gap between ancient terrestrial stoneworking and a celestial understanding of the universe. We are looking at a legacy that reaches toward the stars, suggesting that the boy king's tomb was not a final resting place, but a vault for a technology that his successors were terrified to lose, yet too afraid to use. As we peel back these layers of gold and history, we find ourselves standing on the precipice of a discovery that could redefine the very nature of human origin and our place in the cosmic order. This discovery proves that even the most famous treasures can hide secrets for thousands of years. If the mask was stolen, how much of our history is based on a lie? Does the real face of Nefertiti still exist somewhere else, or is she staring at us through the eyes of the boy king? Let us know what you think below. Please like and subscribe for more hidden history secrets.